In this narrated PowerPoint, we will explore the concept of the congregational life cycle. A vital aspect of understanding the dynamics within a church can be discovered in looking at a diagram of a church or congregational life cycle. Every congregation goes through various phases, from its birth to potential decline, and understanding where a church stands on the life cycle can help in diagnosing issues, preventing decline, and fostering growth. This narrated PowerPoint emphasizes the importance of recognizing these stages and provides insight into how a church can maintain its vitality and avoid the pitfalls that lead to a decline. What should you expect to learn from studying the congregational life cycle? Well, you will learn the different phases of the congregational life cycle as they relate to church administration. The second thing we will examine is the terminology that describes different congregational life cycles. You will learn that a declining church needs to redevelop forward. In this graphic, you will see a bell-shaped curve. A bell-shaped curve, also known as a normal distribution curve, is a graph that represents the distribution of data. It's called bell-shaped because if you use your imagination, the curve looks like a bell. In the context of congregational life, a bell-shaped curve can represent the typical life cycle of a church or congregation. This life cycle usually includes several stages, each with distinct characteristics. On this curve, we will examine 5 stages, beginning on the left bottom with the birth stage. Now, let's examine each of these stages as we go forward. Phase number 1 is birth. This is where vision is at an all-time high. When a congregation is first planted or established, the vision is very prominent, and it's dominant over almost everything else. The church will have few programs, relationships are being developed, and the structure, such as a constitution and bylaws, were there in their infancy. But at birth, vision has prominence. There's also great enthusiasm, and all the people who are in the church are involved, so there is total participation. As you continue up the left-hand side of the curve, you'll see this word, growth. This can be divided into 2 phases. There's early growth, and then there's later growth, or prime growth. Let me talk about early growth first. It has high energy. There's great unity of purpose in the church. The individuals who are members of the congregation are all on the same page. They have a vision that guides them, and they're beginning to work on and develop programs, and their relationships are beginning to become very, very strong at this point. This is a good place for a church to be. There's high energy and unity of purpose here. Prime growth is also part of this stage. It has these characteristics: continued unity, and for the first time, there's a major focus on structures. Some fallout can occur here due to philosophical changes or power people losing their power due to new members coming along, and they may leave the church. As we move up toward the top of the bell-shaped curve, we see the word maturity. This is a place of prime growth. It's also at this point that the dream, the beliefs, the goals, and the structure of the church have all taken place. It's at that point where vision is still prominent, and programs have been developed to get the children's ministry going, for example, or the disciple-making process is in place. The structure is flexible enough to allow the church to move forward and accomplish the things that the church feels led to do. This is the place that we call prime growth. It's a time when there will be some fallout because some will not buy into the methodology of the congregation. But it's also a time that the church begins to move forward. It's a good time. These are good days for the congregation. Frankly, this is where the church needs to remain. You want the church to be on the left side of this life cycle. You don't want to move into the declining area of the life cycle, which is on the right side. But after maturity has been reached, the congregation can move into that place where it begins to plateau. That is, there's no growth, or it begins to lose members, and there's more dropout. A plateau is where the structure is completed, and there is a direction for the church, but there may be some uncertainty now that has begun to creep into the congregation. And so the church needs to begin to think about redeveloping forward once again. And we'll talk more about redeveloping forward later. Now let's look at this declining side of the curve for a moment. There's early decline, and then there's a later decline. In this early decline, this is when the focus reaches the point of being on the comfort of the people who are attending the church. There are a few struggles in this stage. However, finances are usually good. Times now have fewer challenges. The church has fewer challenges. If you go back to the left side when growth was taking place and early growth and maturity were the norm, you find that there were many challenges and the people came together to accomplish them. It's not so much in the decline stage. You don't have many challenges here. When you move toward decline, what you find is erosion is slowly but surely beginning to infiltrate the congregation. It may be imperceptible at first, but it's nevertheless there. And then on that same side, you'll find later decline. There are significant losses here, and there are significant divisions. Divisions can be seen in what's been called worship wars. Perhaps a new pastor has been called, and he suggests using different music in the worship services of the church. And as a result, music wars may break out at that point. There then may be worship style battles. Also, there may be battles over how decisions are made, and conflict between the older members and the newer members. This is not a good place to be. And then the congregation can move off to the point of death. You may be thinking, death? Do congregations actually die? Well, in the United States of America alone, every year, about 4,000 churches close their doors. 4,000 churches. That alarms me, and I bet it does you as well. And even when we add new churches that are being planted to the churches that are dying, we still recognize that it does not produce a net increase. This is the congregational life cycle. Now, where is your church on this scale? I want you to think about that question, and I'd like for you to put together your best thoughts about where your church is. You see, the longer a church exists, the more concerned it becomes with self-preservation, and less it becomes concerned with its original purpose. You may be interested in continuing to study this particular aspect of congregational life, and if so, you might go to Robert Dale's wonderful little book entitled To Dream Again. In that book, he goes into great detail about the congregational life cycle. On this slide, you see a slightly different bell-shaped curve. It's very similar to the one on the previous slide, but there are several differences. Instead of birth, growth, maturity, decline, and death, we find a cycle with 9 characteristics. They are dream, beliefs, goals, structure, ministry, nostalgia, questioning, polarization, and dropout. Now let's share some things about this new graph. A dream is your vision. It's where you believe God wants to take you. Do you remember Martin Luther King Jr.'s wonderful speech where he stated, "I have a dream"? His dream was to see the United States in unity together, functioning not as black and white people, but as people. He had a dream. What is your dream? And on the bell-shaped curve, that dream represents your vision. Now, let's examine beliefs for just a moment. What are the things that you're willing to go to the mat for? You never give them up in terms of the church. Are there doctrines that you're going to celebrate and embrace and fight for? I hear so many churches talk about how important evangelism is in their church. They may even say, "We are an evangelistic church." As a consultant, as soon as I look at the church's calendar and their budget, I can tell you what they value. If they do not have evangelistic events on their calendar, or they do not devote budget funds for evangelism, I can be assured that they are not an evangelistic church. And then there are goals. A goal is a specific target or a desired outcome that a person or group aims to achieve. It's like a destination you're trying to reach. Goals give direction and focus, helping you to plan and take action to accomplish something meaningful. What do you want to accomplish in your church? Can you tell me where you're going and what you want to achieve? And then structure. How do you get it done? What documents guide you? What plans provide the course of direction and undergird your dream, your beliefs, and your goals? Believe it or not, our governing documents or our structure can sometimes interfere with the advancement of the kingdom of God. Now we come to ministry. Ministry is at the top of this bell-shaped curve. It summarizes the fact that as you dream, as you have beliefs that you would die for, you've set goals, you have the proper structure in place, then maturity of the church can begin to happen. You'll look at this graph and you'll recognize that it does not specify decline and death, but it specifies using all of these things on the left side to help you reach that point of ministry. And then another area that we want to look at on this graph is nostalgia. Nostalgia is a sentimental longing or affection for the past, often for a time or place associated with happy memories. That is, how things used to look. What did success look like back then? A common conversation might sound something like this. Do you remember when our Sunday school attendance was 400? And it's nostalgic. It's redreaming what took place years ago without a plan in place to move toward the future. And then there can reach a point of questioning. Often, questions revolve around the staff. Do we have the right leaders here? Do we have leaders who feel called to this ministry? Do they continue to want to serve here in this place? They're not as effective as they should be, and they're not meeting our congregation's needs. And then number 7, it's polarization. Polarization happens when people maybe do not support the pastor any longer. And there are people who reach the point of forming factions, and conflict can erupt. And so sides are chosen. Often these sides will have distinct leadership and will provide the direction for the group to take. And then we come to dropouts. That is, some do not want to be part of the church any longer. They'll go to a different church. They might say, I don't like conflict, so I'm going to another place. Or they might say, this church isn't doing anything effectively. We're moving someplace else. Now, I want you to look at your church. Do you have a clearly defined vision? What are your beliefs? What are your core values as a congregation? What goals have you established for this next year and for the next 3 to 5 years? Are your goals aligned with your vision and beliefs? Does the structure help you to accomplish these goals, beliefs, and visions? Or are they impediments to achieving them? Before you see the same graph that we looked at on the previous slide. But I'm going to add 3 suggestions for staying away from the right side of nostalgia, questioning, polarization, and dropout. I will be adding diagnosis, cure, and prevention to this illustration to help us see how to redevelop forward. If you remember the congregational life cycle that we saw at the very first of this presentation, you will remember that on the right-hand side, early decline, which then moved to later decline, and death were stages along the life cycle. These stages correspond roughly with nostalgia, questioning, polarization, and dropout. Once a church reaches the point of early decline or nostalgia, they begin to recognize the need to redevelop forward. Now, I've used that term twice already, so I want to describe for you what redeveloping forward is about. You see, we don't go back to the other side of the bell-shaped curve. We actually create a different bell-shaped curve that helps us move forward by beginning to address our dreams again, our beliefs, our core values, our goals, and the structure of the church. And when that happens, we can redevelop forward. In reality, we don't really redevelop backward. We always redevelop forward. And what about the diagnosis and the cure and the prevention? Well, these really are all about the same things. We must dream our dream again. About every 7 years, a church must reach the point of developing a new vision. If you're a pastor who's been at a particular church or a staff member at a church for 5, 6, or 7 years, it's time to redevelop forward. Redevelop a vision for that congregation. A vision that will hold them together, that will be clear, concise, and compelling. A vision that will help people move toward the future. If you do not become proactive and invest your energies and your talents and your resources into your dreams, beliefs, goals, and structures, and move to the left side of the bell-shaped curve once again, then you will be moving toward greater decline and perhaps even death. So where are you? Do you need to begin redreaming and revisioning and putting together a new dream or vision for your congregation? I encourage you to do just that, particularly if you've been at the church for 7 years. It's time to revision. I would encourage you to pick up some of the literature by Bob Dale, Aubrey Malfords, or Chuck Lawless and begin redreaming the dream. Every church faces moments of growth, plateau, and potential decline. It's crucial to recognize when the vision and strategies that once propelled the congregation forward need to be revisited and refreshed. A congregation risks stagnation and even decline without proactive efforts to dream again, establish clear goals, and align church structures with these objectives. By embracing the need for change and revisioning the future, churches can move forward with renewed purpose, ensuring they remain vibrant and effective in their mission. It's a challenging but essential process for sustaining long-term growth and health in the life of the church. This is the end of the presentation.